spend a little time in His presence. Excuse me. But I told Bonnie this week, I had an epiphany. You know, all these, and you can go ahead and turn to Genesis 12 if you'd like to while I'm saying this. You've heard me share the story before. You've heard Mom tell a little bit about it. But you heard me share the story that I didn't remember till Mama, and I didn't even remember after Mama told me. I just remember Mama telling me about it, so I can only tell you what she told me. But how that when I was 9 years old, I came in the house and told Mama, or asked Mama, you know what I'm going to be when I grow up? And she said, no, son, I don't know what you're going to be. Tell me what you're going to be. And I told her, I'm going to be a preacher. And turned around and went back out in the yard play like nothing ever happened. Now, the odd thing about that was that she knew, and my folks good people. I had good parents. They just didn't know the Lord at that time. They didn't have a relationship with the Lord. They did get that later on, but at that time, I wasn't being raised in church. Wasn't brought up in church. Had virtually very, very little exposure to the gospel. But I got to thinking about this the other day, and I believe that this is probably the case. That Billy Graham was probably the first exposure to the gospel I ever had in my life. Because in those days, when the Billy Graham Crusade came on TV, now we only got 2 channels back then. It was black and white TV. We got channel 13, channel 10. But when the Billy Graham Crusade came on, the networks preempted all the primetime programs. They preempted it. And if you're going to watch anything that evening from 8 to 9, it'd be Billy Graham and the Crusade. And as a kid, I remember that. Now, the mainstream news media and networks are not going to do that now. They're not going to preempt anything for something like that now. They didn't carry his funeral yesterday except for on Facebook Live and things like that. But in those days, and that was back in the 60s, they preempted everything prime time when Billy Graham came on. Now, as a kid, I watched some of it. I didn't sit down and probably watch the whole program because as a kid, I was probably in and out, probably coming through the living room, saw it, and went on about my business and went out in the yard, whatever I did. But there might have been a few times I actually sat down and watched a good portion of it, if not all of it. But I got all ideas that may be the very seed that God implemented to plant that in my spirit. And that's why I may have told Mama that, because he's the first exposure to the gospel I ever had. And I remember as a child, laying down at night in bed as a young kid. And when I go to bed at night, thinking about death, thinking about God, thinking about what these things were like, what they entail, all these things. And I've got all ideas that, even though it didn't dawn on me at the time, it was probably the seed that Reverend Billy Graham planted as he was speaking to thousands of people and things over TV and stuff. And well, actually over TV, it's probably millions that he was speaking to. And so I may get to shake his hand and thank him personally when I get to heaven. When I find out for sure that was the case, and I'm pretty sure that probably is the case. You know, kids, the soil is easier to plant seeds in kids than it is hard adults. And so I got all ideas that may have had a lot to do with my early inclinations and these things. And so we thank the Lord for it. But that just hit me about 3 nights ago. It actually just kind of fell on my brain, kind of dawned on me about 3 nights ago. That must have been, because there was not another preacher in our family, in either side of the family. I was the first preacher to come along, and about 4 or 5 generations on either side of my family. Now, we have some preachers now, but I was the first one in at least that amount of time. And so Mama knew that there was, what shocked her so, she knew that I hadn't been around that kind of influence. I had not been exposed to that kind of influence. I was being raised in church, things like this. So I got all ideas. It was the seed planting of Dr. Billy Graham that did that. And God knows how many seeds he did plant in countless. It was estimated the other day that he probably in his lifetime of ministry spoke to 2.5 billion people. That's a lot of people. and God greatly used a man. And when you go to the library, Carol, when you get to go to the library, you'll see what we've seen. The library is not glorifying Billy Graham. It's not about Billy Graham. It's about what God did through Billy Graham and through Ruth Graham and through this team that he had. And